Olsen Filipana. He is a Hall of Fame rugby league legend. He paved the way for a Pacific revolution, the Māori and Pacific Islanders that play today. I think he was the first one to really show what that group of people could do and dominate in the NRL. For those who need a bit of a refresher to figure out who this man was, take a look.
Fed by a friend. It's gone with the feed. This is Filipana. Filipana out of one. Filipana's in the clear. Mark Murray now getting into Gary Jack. Oh no, hefty tackle from that man again, Olsen Filipana. Last sight. 2 paces. And there it comes. And it's there. Fine kick from Filipana.
Onto Olsen Filipana. He puts Eddie's out on one. Olsen two. He's got runners with Mark Graham. Mark Graham unlaced him to Olsen Filipana, and he's there. The big man has crashed over. There's no 5 minutes at the moment, let me tell you. That was ridiculous. Absolutely no. It's Olsen Filipana. He makes the break. Filipana. That's himself only 2 paces. Bang, there's the ball in the air. And he's got the points too. So the Kiwis lead Australia 6-0 at the Sydney Cricket Ground.
And the author of The Big O, which is the name of the autobiography, is Patrick Skene. And he joins us now. Patrick, thank you so much for joining us here on Fox League Live. Firstly, can I begin by asking you how this concept landed on your desk?
I was writing for The Guardian Australia, a series called the Forgotten series, and it was on Australian sports people that hadn't really been covered. And I did a story on Olsen, and it went viral. And I was a big fan of Olsen growing up. My grandmother lived in Lilyfield, so I used to head down to watch the Tigers. And I just wondered where he went, so I decided to check up, and he was still doing his Garbo run, which was pretty amazing. He's one of Sydney's longest-serving Garbos. And he just really resonates with people, and he's a cult hero, and over 250,000 people read this article. So I thought, why not write a book? So Olsen and I are 50-50 partners in the book, and it's been very warmly received and well reviewed. And it's just a story I think absolutely has to be told, because we need to understand the origins of the pipeline, which has now provided 48% of the players in the NRL.
Patrick, Nathan Highmarsh, mate, when you sat down with Olsen to write this book with him, what were some of the things that really jumped out to you that you were unaware of about him?
His humility is simply unbelievable. And I remember he used to draw a lot of players and pass the ball. And if they had a statistic for assists back in the day, Olsen would have been the leader of assists. His humility is amazing. And just the fact that it was the first time I'd ever heard racism from the crowd when I went out to Leichhardt and I heard some people get into him. So just the fact that he had to go through more than other people to play the game he loved really stood out for me, and I thought, why not reward this guy with having his story told?
Patrick, Cooper Cronk here. I imagine you've written a lot of books and a lot of articles around in rugby league and different sports for that fact. What was the one thing writing this book, reliving the days of Olsen and what he did, that resonated with you that helps today's Pacific players play the game?
I think what helps Pacific players play the game now is the personalised man management side of it. Back then it was one size fits all. And guys like Olsen, a lot of the poly boys today are they're mummy's boys, effectively. The dads are very harsh disciplinarians, particularly the Samoans and Tongans. So back then, giving guys a spray or talking 1,000,000 miles an hour or threatening them with dropping them to reserve grade, that wasn't a good way to handle the Pacific and Māori players. But you would know yourself, Coops, from Craig Bellamy, who's the current master, I think, of man management. It's very important that it's customised. Some guys can handle a spray, some guys can't. But I think the big thing that they can take away is that a lot of the Sydney coaches really didn't know how to get the best out of Olsen, whereas Graham Lowe was always able to turn him into a superhero by empathy, and he'd love him like a second son and really take care of any problems he had off the field. And he would repay that in gratitude with great performances.
And are there any stories in the book specifically regarding Graham Lowe's coaching that you can tell us about?
I think there's one that stands out, and that is after the second test in 1985, where basically the Kiwis did everything. They beat the Kangaroos hands down except on the scoreboard. Wally Lewis got them out of jail with a last-minute pass. and they were a bit down and out and depressed because they'd done everything right and still lost. And he took them on a bus up to Queen Street Mall in New Zealand in Auckland and just walked the team from the top of the mall down to the bottom. And he clued up all the radio stations before that. And all the white-collar workers and blue-collar workers all came out and started cheering the Kiwis, and they lifted them out of their slump. And the next test, they were just Superman, and they thrashed Australia 18-0. And it was, for me, the turning point for New Zealand from being punching bags to being the third formidable force in international rugby league.
Patrick, we've got a copy of the book here, and we've flicked through it quickly before coming on the show. And the one thing that stuck out to me was in 1980, Olsen was doing the garbage run around the streets of Sydney and actually picked up the rubbish bin of the biggest name in rugby league at that time, Arthur Beetson. How has he told the story about that sort of run-in and the run-ins of other rugby league icons during that era?
Well, it's amazing how many people who Olsen has been their garbo from up in Ryde, Blocker Roach, he was his garbo, he was Vossi's garbo, he was Peter Fitzsimon's garbo. He's one of Sydney's longest-serving garbos now. He's just hit his 40th year. But very luckily, as Olsen says, luckily the technology has favoured him because his knees are gone now. But he's up in the truck now. He doesn't go out the back. He's just up in the truck, and he said it's like playing Space Invaders. so it's and that shot with that photograph with Artie, which is in the book, is simply unbelievable because Artie went on to be his coach.
Yeah.
And Artie, in many ways, was a prototype before Olsen, a big man that had incredible ball skills, and Artie could have played in the back as well. Key difference was Artie loved, if you said something to Artie, Artie would punch you back. And Olsen made a promise to his mother that he'd never punch anyone back, no matter what they did, because he didn't want to give Polynesians and Māori a bad name. So that was the difference. Olsen would get them back legally and just take their number and put a big shot on them. But you didn't want to mess around with Artie Beetson.
Patrick, I'm just going through your chapters here, mate. Got Kingslayer in Chapter 7 and then Chapter 8, Deliverance. Now, is that something different or that's nothing like the movie, is it? Deliverance or anything like that, is it?
No, I wasn't a big fan. There were some moments in Deliverance that I'll never forget.
Yes. But what's the Kingslayer? Kingslayer, what are they talking about there? Is that Wally Lewis in a test match?
That's Wally Lewis, and the story is that in the first test in Brisbane, Olsen won the man of the match, and Olsen went to shake Wally's hand after the game because Wally was his hero, and Wally brushed him. So Olsen said, okay, I'm going to raise the black flag here, and came out and won the man of the match in the second test and treated Wally in a way. All those tests are on YouTube, and no one has ever treated Wally Lewis like that. And Wally, in his 2 autobiographies, never mentioned Olsen's name. But I spoke to Wally, and he's now he doesn't really have that same competitive angst that he had before. I think that surgery he's had a brush with mortality, and he has for the first time admitted that Olsen got over him, just the speed and the size. There'd never been a 5'8" that big and that mobile, and it was a prototype that's quite normal today. But Wally struggled. By 1986, the next year, Wally had found out a way to combat it. But he certainly slayed the king, the immortal Wally Lewis, in a way that no one ever has.
Patrick, you've obviously followed rugby league for a long time, written obviously books and articles all about that. What's your take on the current situation and the place that rugby league plays in people's lives?
I am of the belief that rugby league is different to other sports. I believe rugby league is definitively an essential service. It was founded to give people that were disadvantaged by opportunity a fair go. I was at a rugby league historians conference, which was Revenge of the Nerds, and we're all there swapping our tales. And the guy got up at the front and said, there's no equivalent of this in rugby union. It doesn't exist. People just don't care as much about union as they do about rugby league. And I like to say that in rugby league, like the Vikings, you burn the boats. Often they don't have a lot of the players don't have a plan B like the guys in rugby do. They can't go and become stockbrokers. It's often off to the building site. So you just get high levels of passion. And I remember growing up, and the league players were with us. They were Stormont and Packers, and they were working with us. And it was amazing just seeing a guy working in a factory during the week would come out and be this superstar on the Sunday. So I think it's a different sport. I think it should be treated differently. And if we lose the club out of this, I think that's an enormous tragedy, particularly if it's someone like Manly, because we really need teams like Manly because, we need our middle-class teams, not just a working-class game. We need the Manlys and Cronullers because they add extra spice for the sponsors. So I think absolutely play, and I think if they have hygiene higher than what's going on in the general population, why not? All those haters want to stop league anyway, so I don't think we should listen to what they say.
Are you a Manly fan, Patrick?
Oh, I've got a long and interesting history. I was originally a Balmain fan, and then I died in the Wool Dogs fan, but lately I've been Warriors.
Warriors.
Nice.
I just love the stand they're taking, and they're really sticking up for rugby league and going into quarantine. I really love when they decided to stay the other day. Plus, I can't help falling in love with them. All the research I've done for Olsen, that team means so much to the people in New Zealand that I just love them.
Yeah, absolutely. And Patrick, before we let you go, can I ask, in your experience of writing the book, what was the most enjoyable, satisfying or rewarding story or element to this whole process as an author?
I think the big story was it's a story between Olsen and his mother. His mother, Sissy, was this big, strong Māori woman who really stuck up for her boys, and she went through a hard time which is detailed in the book, with Olsen's father. But after that 18-0 win in the third test in 1985, he got his mother up on stage. And, Olsen had gone through so much in Sydney. He'd been racially abused. He'd been put in reserve grade by coaches. And his mother was really worried about him. And after that test, they both got up on the stage and gave a speech. And they both cried, and everyone cried. And it was just a great story of redemption. His mother passed away a little bit later. But, just that he was able to deliver that to his mother, I think is just so rugby league.
Well said. Thank you so much, Patrick Skene, the author of The Big O, for joining us on Fox League Live this afternoon.
Thanks, guys. Much appreciated.
Thank you, Patrick.
And if you at home would like to get your copy, you can head to thebigo.kiwi, www.thebigo.kiwi to pre-order your copy. They go on sale as of Thursday, the 14th of May. There are some awesome photos in there. I saw you.
Right, yes.
As well.
Picture book for Hindy.
Yeah, that's the first thing I do when I pick up a look at the pictures, and then I read.